you. Dr. Andrew Maxey will be our lead instructor tonight. Just Google him if you have not already, and see all of the things he has done to lead efforts in Alabama and really across the country in terms of grading and reporting. So Dr. Maxey, I'll let you go first and introduce yourself.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shields, and thank you everyone for the opportunity to be here tonight. So just a real quick background about who I am, introduction, and I think we'll do other introductions, then we'll get to the session. But I have been in public education since 1999, and I have taught in 3 different states. I am a recovering high school teacher. By that, I mean I taught high school language arts the whole time I was in the classroom. And then I was a middle school administrator, and I figured out I should have been in middle school the whole time. That's because in middle school, nobody's crazy because everybody's crazy. And that's just my people. So I love it. I have been at the district level for the last 7 years. And then, as Dr. Shields mentioned, I've really been fortunate to have the opportunity to be engaged in a number of initiatives and projects, grading and the middle level, leadership, and a great passion is also summer learning. But tonight, we're just going to focus on grading. And I'll say, I would disagree with one thing Dr. Shields said. I do not consider myself an expert. I just consider myself a committed, obsessed student of this thing. I've been studying grading practices for probably 18 years now. So trying to learn as much as I can and then share what I'm learning with other people.
I love that. Thank you, Dr. Maxey. And Mr. Sean Stevens and I also go way back. I go way back with all 3 of you. But Mr. Stevens and I work together in the Office of Student Learning. He and I have actually co-presented. I believe Sean and Andrew, Dr. Maxey have co-presented on grading and reporting. So Sean is a go-to at the state level. I know many of you are learning to use Power School. And so Sean wanted to be part of this discussion tonight to be able to field any questions and, of course, support the discussion tonight. So Sean, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Thanks, Dr. Shields and Ms. Washington, for the invitation to help come and join and just really be part of a lively conversation about, how we can, manage our classrooms and ensure that our students are really engaged in knowing where they stand, how they can improve, what growth looks like, and most importantly, that their grades actually reflect the learning that's being accomplished in their classroom. So I appreciate that opportunity. Hello, everyone. I'm Sean Stevens. I work in the Office of Student Learning with Dr. Shields and used to work with Ms. Washington too before. I have the privilege of working in a section which oversees all of our content areas, or most of our content areas, as well as school counseling and libraries and English learners and Alabama MTSS, as well as supporting all of the revisions of the standards that each of you are teaching from every day. And so I'm a 24-year veteran educator who began my career as a business teacher and then a school counselor in Sylacauga City before I came to the department 8 years ago, last week, I believe it was. And so I have just the most, I'm the luckiest guy in the world. And so, but I will say this, that I've had the opportunity to serve as a mentor for 4 teachers who came to the profession from, a different area, as well as, be a supervisor for many student teachers. And so I have a heart for this, and I have a heart for what you're going through as either a first-year teacher, emergency certified teacher, someone who's coming to our profession from another area. And again, something that we're all very passionate about is how we can help support you so that you will continue to be part of our family and be as successful as you possibly can. So I appreciate getting to be with Andrew as well and Dr. Schutz. We've all kind of presented together and are really passionate about this topic. And so really look forward to that.
Really. Thanks, Sean. And I was teasing Suzanne a moment ago because, she's a Milken educator. She's an Alabama Teacher of the Year. I would say she's an all-around amazing human being. So she's got, and so many other things. So Suzanne, I just kind of started with some of the We've had some of your fellow Alabama Teachers of the Year present the previous week. So it's so important to us to have representation from our Alabama toys. But I know this is an area of expertise, or as Andrew said, of learning for you as well. So please introduce yourself.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Shields. I am really excited about being here tonight. And, I'm a fellow traveler. I have was in the classroom for over 30 years and loved every moment of it. I'm mostly in secondary, high school. My jam is ninth grade. I love geometry and teaching geometry, but I've also done biology and anatomy, physiology, and Opelika, Homewood, Oak Mountain, and Spain Park. Had the opportunity to work with some fabulous colleagues. Yay, somebody else loves ninth graders. Thank you, William. Me too. But when I first started teaching, we had no databases. We averaged our grades on a calculator that only had 4 functions. So I think, my grading philosophy has changed many, many times over the years. And I think the most important thing is something that Mr. Stevens mentioned is, what do our grades mean, and do our grades reflect student learning? And that is what we want. And that is the overall goal for us. And I hope I can share some ideas tonight that might help somebody.
Thanks, Suzanne. Suzanne is also a nationally board certified teacher. And actually, Andrew, we should have put that on yours as well. I know them through the national board world, and we've had a number of NBCTs join us. Sean, I should tell you, we have a lot of folks with us that are coming from the career tech world. And Sean has also started out in that as well, and has just a great amount of wisdom and background, and counseling as well. So you are going to find lots of friends in this room who are in the same space you were a number of years ago. So if you haven't already, if you just joined, we had asked in the chat, wouldn't it be fun if we could have done that picture? But if you have not already told us a little bit about your socks, we certainly want to know what you chose tonight. I think it's adorable that your kids have chosen your socks for tonight. That's cute. So yeah, tell us about your creativity when it comes to your footwear. And with that, Andrew, I'm going to mute myself, and I will run the polls in the breakout rooms when you tell me. All yours. And perfect. I will advance slides. Just tell me when.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dr. Shields. And y'all are going to have to wave. So Sean and Suzanne, you just unmute and jump in here, and also flag me down when we get close to time, because if you let me, we'll be here all night long. That seems a little ironic to me, because I just need to warn everyone in this session, if you want to make your peers uncomfortable tomorrow, go up and start talking to them about grades, because this is one thing that almost every teacher is really defensive about, and they'll be happy to give you advice. But just I'm going to say, this is a topic that we have all of us have expressed passion about this evening, but part of that is because it's so often misunderstood. So we've got basically three goals for tonight. So I'm hoping by the end of this session, everyone here can articulate what a grade is. Wow, that seems simplistic, but can we finish this session being able to say with confidence what a grade is? What's the nature of a grade? Can we just think a little bit about what works well in regards to grading? And then we probably do want to touch on some things that don't work well, that are common practice, but are really not super effective when it comes to grading practices. Again, just so you know, a lot of sessions that have been part of prep, you're going to hear very similar things in your school and from other folks from what you've been hearing in those sessions. Because in education, we tend to overlook grading a little bit sometimes, you might hear some things this evening that aren't things you've just heard all the time. However, we're not going to go real deep. If you want to do that, you saw my email address. The one thing that will get me to reply to an email to you almost immediately is if you just put question about grades in the subject. I will drop everything and reply. All right, Dr. Shields, let's go. And here's the first thing you need to understand, everyone. It's sort of bad news. Like, you probably need to forget most of what you think you know about grading. And I'm betting what you think you know about grading comes from how you were graded. That was certainly the case for me when I started out as a teacher. A lot of my grading practices were informed by the way I was graded as a student. So let me ask you this, Dr. Shields, roll that poll, and we've just got 2 questions right here. All right, so everyone chime in on these as they come up. Super simple questions for you to answer. So I'm gonna talk while you answer, and just hit submit as soon as you have it. First of all, as a student, I received a passing grade, maybe even a high grade, when I did not really learn what I had supposed to have learned. Is that true about you or false? And then secondly, as a student, I've had points taken off for things that were not about the actual learning. True or false? All right, put your 2 answers in, hit submit. We're gonna wait about another 10 seconds. So while we're waiting for those results to come back, I'm gonna tell you, for number 1, for me, that's a big yes for me. I've absolutely gotten a high grade, not just a decent grade, but a high grade about something that I did not really understand. I saw the results for a second, and now there they are. Ooh, look at this. We're nearly split on number 1. So for me personally, for number 2, yeah, I had points taken off for things that aren't about learning. Sean, Suzanne, like, we can give some examples here. You ever had points taken off for things that weren't about the learning?
Absolutely. I had points taken off because I didn't put my name on my paper.
Absolutely. Sean?
How about points taken off because you didn't fold your paper hot dog style as opposed to
Instead of taco
other
style? No.
Right.
That is no good. Dr. Shields?
I was going to say what Sean said. He kind of beat me to it. Yes. Or I had points taken off because I used a pencil instead of a pen.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
Someone in the chat got points taken off for no dates on the paper.
Absolutely. Keep sharing some of those things there. So I'm just, there's more to this, but there are some things about the way you were graded like that are really not effective practice. And so if there's one sort of philosophical thing that I would encourage you to notice or to take in this evening, it's that you need to really think about what grades are for. So that's the first thing we're going to talk about. All right, hit us with the next one there. And since we're all about, this is about tests and grades and things, we're going to take a little quiz here. So everyone, get your fingers all limbered up. We're all about to type some stuff. Are you ready? Fingers. All right, here we go. Pop quiz. Question number 1. They're all going to be fill in the blank. All right, we did multiple choice, which is the way Jesus did his questions, or I don't know. Can I say that, Dr. Shields? That's a little crazy.
You can say that.
I'm saying we're obsessed with multiple choice in education, right? All right, here we go. Question number 1, fill in the blank. You just fill in the blank. Dr. Maxey, if I bring you extra tissues, donate to the food bank drive, stay after class, will you blank me an A? Oh, these answers are ticking through faster than I can read, and every single one of them is the same answer. Congrats. That is the correct answer. Here we go. Number 2. Dr. Maxey, why did you give me a D? Wait. I didn't give you a D. You blank it. Oh my goodness, Dr. Shields. Look at all these folks in here that know the answers already. It makes me wonder if they're cheating off each other, or if it's just that we had the same experience in school, that we've heard these lines before. We have said these lines before. I think there's a third question. Or maybe there's not. Is it? Yeah. Dr. Maxey, what do I have to blank an A in this class? Actually, on this one, this is kind of unbelievable that everyone's giving the exact same answer here. Yeah, we know. So let me ask you guys a question. We can go to the next slide. All of those things that we were just talking about, what kind of language is give me an A? You earned it. What else did we say? Get a good grade. Like what does that say about the nature of grades? So you see a couple of hints here on the screen. I want to suggest that maybe the way, at least when oh, there it is right there. Shout out to Maxey. We see grades as being transactional. We think of grades as being compensation. You do for me, I do for you. It's a transaction. So I wonder if that's really what grades should be. But instead, before I even try to tell you what I think a grade should be, what I have come to believe, and I loved what Suzanne said earlier about my philosophy of grading and my beliefs about grading not staying the same, that as I continue to learn, it continues to grow and shift, I think, for the better. So before we go anywhere else, I do want to, Dr. Shields said, breakout groups are a real favorite here. So, okay, let's do one. One more slide before we send folks to breakout groups. So Dr. Shields, I'm trusting you that you have a process and people are going to get pushed into a group. When you go to your group, we're going to give you, let's say 3 minutes. Is that, you think that's enough time, co-presenters, to come up with a definition, or do we need to do a little more than that?
5 minutes.
5 minutes. Here we go.
I agree.
Okay. So in your group, you are together going to draft a definition of grade. The definition of grade is what? You only get one sentence. And then when you come back here, whoever in your group has the last name closest to the end of the alphabet is going to put that in the chat. Don't mean to call anybody out, but you can't possibly have a definition yet because you haven't gone to your group. Now, suggest that to your group. That might be what your group brings back. But as a group, agree on what is our definition of grade. Then we're going to come back, share that in the chat, and then we'll go forward. So 5 minutes as soon as Dr. Shields releases you. All right, I'll take the first one. A measurement or evaluation of a student's performance and understanding of the material in a course, class, or on an assignment, exam, or project. Nice. All right. Let me see. My assistants, not my assistants, my co.
Andrew, you're muted.
Sorry about that. That was the whole thing that I missed. Thank you for letting me know. All right, I'm going to read the first one. Suzanne and Sean, Dr. Shields, help me with these. I'm going to take the first one, but you guys jump in here. The first one I see says a measurement or evaluation of a student's performance and understanding of the material in a course, class, or on an assignment, exam, or project. What else do we have?
Measure of knowledge and the quality of growth. I like that.
A number represented to show student learning. An
I-
alphabet number used to measure knowledge.
Yeah,
Like
these
that
are good.
one.
These are good
Mhm.
stuff. To access or measure the knowledge attained from a lesson. Okay, I love these. I love the direction these are going. Dr. Shields, advance just one click. Here's my working definition of a grade. The way I think of a grade is a description of the degree to which a student has mastered the learning target. So I heard some of that in several of those. So numbers, letters, those are symbols, and we agree on what the symbols mean, or we think we agree on what the symbols mean. So they represent what the student has mastered. Dr. Shields, go back a couple to where we had those kind of graphics. So, or sorry, one more. The way our grades and grading practices tend to function, forward just one more, in the classroom is that we already said this tends to be transactional. It tends to be compensation. But what I'm hearing the trend is they really need to be communication. So if you latch onto one idea, the question for me is, how do my grades communicate? And then the question is, what do they communicate and how do they do that stuff? Bring us back to my definition, Dr. Shields. Again, my definition is that it's a description of the degree to which a student has mastered the learning material. One more click and nothing else. See, I add that part because I bet there's other stuff in the grades you got. Now, I'm not going to call you out and talk about what you might be doing in the classroom, but I'll call myself out. There was some other things in the grades for me for a while, right? The things several of us talked about earlier this evening. So if I put in, I'm going to give you points if you blank, that's not about the learning specifically, or take away points. Now, there's things I need you to do, but I can hold you accountable without documenting that in your academic grade, your grade about mastery here. So for me, this is my working definition of what a grade is. So to me, that's the first thing we need to think about. And I know earlier in these sessions, you've talked about planning for instruction, standards, and then how that comes together. And I think you probably have already heard of the notion of a learning target. So I don't know about you, sometimes I need a little visual. So on the next slide, Dr. Shields is going to show us, let's assume for a minute, this picture of a physical target represents our learning target. And then a grade comes in and lands for us. Now, the grade is, one more, that little distance right there, the relationship between the performance and the target. One more will give us, take that definition that we had and say, that relationship right there, that's what a grade should tell us. By the way, if you think of this as, so feedback is a type of grade or is a part of the grading process. But if you think about athletics, about coaching, when you give feedback, it's not to be cruel. You don't tell your athlete that their swing is wrong or their hips aren't the way they're supposed to be because you're mocking them. You're telling them that so that they can get it right, so that they can receive the feedback and make improvements. So part of the purpose of the grade is to communicate, this is what we were looking for, this is what it was. We can understand how those things relate to each other. I'm going to take a breath here and invite my friends in. What should we add here? Of the 3 learning targets we had today, we're trying to wrap up this first one here. What is a grade? Y'all help me out here, because I think different perspectives on this are probably going to be helpful.
Well, Maxey, I was going to just add to talking about communicating, where our areas of strength are and where our areas of improvements are needed. Also, should be something that communicates to not just students, but their families as well. and to help ensure that while everyone on planet Earth has been graded, based on 10-point scales and 100-point scale for all of these years, what that never really has been able to do is truly tell students and their families what that means and what to do with it. And so I think that we have that obligation to really work to be sure that what we are using and what we are doing is able to communicate, and then what next steps are needed. I think that that's another probably a part of grading that's always been a hard one, right? Everything seems to just stop when that grade is issued, when that grade is earned, but yet very little regarding the next steps and what do I need to do next. And I think that that's why our whole mission at trying to get to standards-based grading really champions that, is that it doesn't end when the grade is earned or something. That's actually where it begins, and that feedback is so important. Suzanne?
I agree. And the idea of, are we grading for the amount of time? Are we grading for the skill or the whatever concept we're trying to get across? And not every student in our classroom is going to get that in the same amount of time. And some may need a little bit more, some may need a little bit less. But that whole idea of mastering that learning target and what steps are needed along the way to get to that mastery, and how do we define mastery? I think that's something we have to ask ourselves, and we have to work toward.
Andrew, I remember something you said a few years ago, and I wrote it down. It was, I think you presented Mega a couple years back, and you said something like, and I think maybe it was a Gusky quote you were referring to, but that students can learn without a grade, but they can't learn without feedback. And that just has always sat with me, because we grew up, and you said, forget everything we know. We grew up with that mentality of, I did this for a grade. I did this for this thing, not because it can help me learn something. And then we as teachers, and just so you know, Dr. Maxey, I kind of prepped them for you last week, and I was telling them, if we're taking points off because a student didn't put his name on his paper, or I'm giving 25 bonus points because you stayed after class to help me clean up my room, or to move, that's malpractice. I mean, really, it is, that we are saying that they earned something that they did not.
Absolutely.
And so it's incumbent on us to make sure that there's integrity.
Now, I want to pause right here and make sure we're super clear that this is hard. This is a hard teaching, as has been said. And I want to encourage everyone that's on here, all the questions you have, and if you're paying attention, you have questions. All the questions you have are legitimate. Every one of us that are talking to you have wrestled with all of this. So we are making claims to you, but none of this is easy. To put this into practice is difficult to do. So I'm actually trying to keep this at the basic level, but then how to put that into practice, I'm just saying, join the learning, join the thought process of how to make this work. Let's go to our second learning target. So let's talk about some things that work. Before we even get to grades, here's some things that we really, really want to recommend to you. First of all, your students. So first of all, you need to know what your students are supposed to be learning. I want to very carefully distinguish between learning and doing. And if you look at the content standards in your area, that describes what students should know. And then it will also describe what they should be able to do, know and be able to do. And what they do to learn that is a separate question. Now, remember, you guys have talked about planning. You've talked about knowing your standards, but you have to start from what knowing what students are supposed to learn. So nailed it in the chat. This is about standards. So one, I have to know. Full disclosure, when I was a first year teacher, I was just teaching the book, and we would read the chapter, and then I would make up some questions, and the kids would answer the questions. And there was 1 or 2 times, I'm 3 states away, and those kids that I taught are in their probably 40s by now, so hopefully the statute of limitations has passed. But there are times when I'm reading the book tonight so that I can be 1 chapter ahead of them, because I haven't even read the book before that we're teaching, let alone taught it, right? So that was something I had to get better at, is I know what we're trying to learn first, and then I figure out how to make that happen. And the second point we really recommend here for you is that your students need to know what they're supposed to be learning before they set out to learn it. So this is something about your learning target, right? Like what? So in case you haven't experienced this yet, we administrators, we're going to pester you about, are your learning targets on the board? Is the learning objective on the board? That's not because there's some magic in that. It's because if we know what we're doing, we're more likely to be doing that thing. So my students would come in and say, what are we doing today? And I would say, we're going to be really digging into author's purpose. Like, no, what are we doing? I'm like, we're talking about author's purpose. And they would say, I mean, what are we reading? I'm like, that's a whole other question. We're using this text, but that's not what we're doing. That's how we're doing the thing today, right? So students need to know, what are we trying to accomplish here today, and make that thing happen. And then the next part that is part of this, back just one, sorry, I didn't address, be clear with your folks with your students about what mastery looks like. So what you're supposed to be learning, and then what learning looks like. What should the students be able to do as evidence of their learning? So all of that comes before we even start talking about grades. Okay, so this is really more instructional practice, and I think it's probably very close to the conversations you've already had before. So now, if we advance one more, here are some really specific recommendations. So make your grade only about the learning target. Now, by the way, there are some standards in some content areas and some grade levels that are about the doing. For example, Sean can weigh in here. You mentioned your expertise in CTE. Some of those standards. So if you're in a welding class, doing the weld, that's an action. That's a thing you do, right? And maybe there's a product that you are coming up with. But so I taught language arts. The name at the top of the paper, that's not the standard, right? So I may need to hold a student accountable for doing or not doing a certain thing. But when I give feedback on their writing, for example, it's only going to be about their writing. I agree with the comments being made about those proficiency scales, which is the next point here. Whenever you can, include more information for students. What I mean is, don't only give a number or a letter as your feedback. So use a rubric, use your proficiency scales, make comments, give feedback. Again, I've seen all kinds of great examples. One was a video I've seen before. If you want to see it, I can find it and send it to you later. A teacher who, after her math students take a test, instead of grading and giving it back, they talk about highlighting their mistakes. So she just highlights their mistakes, and then they have to talk about what's the issue here. And she talks about her favorite mistakes. So it's about learning, not about, oh, just tell me what number I had, right? How you make that, the giving of grades into an act of feedback. And part of what makes that more powerful is when you give even a few notes on it. And that can be written, if some of us, sometimes we have technology, like if you're a Google district and you can do like a real short video clip attached to something a student has turned in, you can just have a quick conversation with a student. It can be lots of different ways. So finding ways to give other information. All right.
Hey, Andrew, can I pop in there? I saw a really great question, and I know when I started having some thoughts myself about grading, I asked the same question. You know, how do I hold kids responsible? Like, how do I make them put their name on their paper? How do I make them make sure that they fold it hamburger style like I asked? And so, and I think Andrew's going to be addressing that later, but I keep saying, you know, a very similar comment in chat, like, well, what do we do? How do we hold them accountable? And that goes back to some of those earlier conversations we had when we were talking about classroom management with Jennifer Brown and Dr. Dillard about, one, having those conversations with your students. I know Andrew may share this in a little bit as well, but no one is saying that you cannot provide feedback on those social skills and those things that you expect your students to do every day, whether it's being quiet, come to class prepared, all of those things, and to actually report out as a separate thing from how they did in their English class, for how they did in their social studies class. So Andrew, I just wanted to kind of give you a heads up that I'm seeing that in the chat, that many of you grew up with, if you didn't put your name on your paper, 10 points off. If you turned your paper in late, it's 20 points off, because that's what we do. And so we want you to know, no one is saying we don't want to hold kids accountable.
Absolutely.
We're saying, one, do those kids even care that you take 10 points off? Is that even going to make them accountable? Probably not. So back to you, Andrew. I just want to give you a heads up.
Absolutely. I appreciate that. And I want to invite the others in here as well before we kind of go to let me do just one more point. I think there's one more point in the section, and then I'll invite everyone else in. The other specific recommendation I have is, when you grade assignments, return them as soon as you can. I'm not going to say a number. I'm not going to name how long that should be, because we have so many content areas, so many different factors here. But as soon as you can, because if grades are about communication, and the function of a grade should be to say, hey kid, here was the learning target and here is where your performance was, the longer you wait to give that to them, the less valuable it is to their learning. Let me give you a really specific example from this semester. My eldest child, who is an 11th grader, several weeks ago was working on an outline for an essay she had to write, the first essay she had ever written for this teacher. So we worked together, you know, I was giving her some advice, etc. 2 weeks later, she came and she's having to write another essay. Oh, wonderful. They're doing multiple rounds. So she's asking me these questions. And I said, well, what feedback did your teacher give you last time? What did your teacher say about this issue? And she said, I haven't gotten my first essay back yet. And my heart sank, because this, what for me was an example of where she was not able to learn what, you know, get feedback and know whether her process the first time was on target or off target. So to me, I saw that as a missed opportunity. If her teacher had been able to give her some feedback, then she could have made improvements on her performance the second time. So that's what I'm saying is, I very much understand how daunting and how time consuming everything about the job is. When you wait an extended period of time, so what your principal is probably going to fuss at you about is if you dump a bunch of grades in right before the grading period, and then the mama's going to be mad at you, especially when that changes the grade. But to me, that's not the real reason why to try not to do that. The real reason is it's way less valuable to the kids. It's not communication. If it's compensation and you've been owing them those points, you're just a bad friend and didn't pay them back in time, right? Like, you need to get better on paying folks back. But if it's communication, it doesn't, you can't holler stop to your friend the day after they stepped out into traffic. They need to hear that from you right then. So, all right, jump in here, my friends. What else on what works? And I'm trying to keep some of these things basic and simple for just a few sort of basic thoughts about grading.
I was just going to throw in there. So a lot of times as a new, and I felt this way as a new teacher, and I was an ELA teacher, social studies teacher, I feel like I had to grade everything. Like if someone gave me an essay, then I needed to be looking for every single conceivable thing about that paper and spend 45 minutes per student. And I had 160 students. Just like Andrew said, eventually you're like, okay, I am looking for these things in that paper. So, being very careful about do not exhaust yourself with the grading process, because I saw some of you in the chat were like, oh my gosh, that's so hard to do. Well, make sure that you create parameters for yourself about what grading can look like. If you teach a core class that has a lot of grading time and effort, like specifically essays and those sorts of things, thinking about how you can time yourself and use rubrics, it is a game changer.
Absolutely.
I agree 100%. And thinking about, math and your homework, what is your purpose of your of homework for math? Is your purpose to practice the things that you discovered and that you worked on during class? Then, why do you have to put a grade on it? I had a colleague that graded every homework paper of every student every day, and it almost killed her. But that, to me, that's not the purpose. The purpose is for them to practice, and then you do a real quick go over. They agree, they disagree, what questions do you have? And then you can give them feedback, and then also you're getting feedback. They did understand this, they didn't, we need to work on this particular type of problem. And you cannot grade every single thing they do, and using strategies where they can help each other, where they're working together in a pair and they can find each other's mistakes. You don't have to be the only one helping each and every student. They can help each other. They can, there's all kinds of pair share, Sage Scribe strategies where students can work together and check each other's work. Even an inside-outside circle, that would include movement too, where they're actually, and that error analysis helps them not make that mistake the next time.
And I'm so glad you said that, Suzanne. I was going to say, one of the things that most people, I think, after you've done this for some time, you realize that anything that you're using for practice really isn't something that most people end up, like you said, grading every single thing that everyone ever does. Not only is it exhausting, it also really doesn't actually provide a result of where that learning and growth is happening. I will say that, there's a big difference in checking work versus, grading work. And I think that that's also a great strategy that you can use to peer reviews. All those things are little things. I will say that above all, recognizing that not just only do your students learn in different ways, but that they also should have an opportunity to actually demonstrate their knowledge in a number of ways. I think that that's one thing that a lot of great teachers realize and put those kinds of efforts into their classroom activities so that students can truly show what they've learned in a variety of ways. It also makes the instruction much more interesting. It also helps with, I think, just the overall evaluation of how your teaching is going by getting that same feedback too. And I think it's something to definitely keep in mind. I will say for those that are kind of middle and secondary folks, one of the greatest areas of malpractice that you can do is have your assignments and things in categories with percentages, and then only have one assignment. We used to have a teacher that would, projects were worth 20% of your final grade, yet there was only one in a grading period, and they would wait, or one for the entire semester, and would wait to assign it in December, yet the kids had essentially had their grades hijacked for months. And if anyone never tells you this, just let me give you this one. So when you have no grade in those kinds of categories, your students' grades are actually calculated by the other categories. And that's something that really can set students and their parents and families off when all of a sudden, they had an A up until yesterday and now they have a D. Well, it's because that one assignment that was worth 20% of their grade has been hijacked for months. And it's something that great teachers would never do, and certainly not do to their students.
Absolutely. I really love the discussion that's going on in the chat as well. I'm going to invite William. I see your comment there. I totally get that scratchiness about going from total points to a percentage. I will say I believe in that very much. My email inbox is open, or I would love to kind of have a conversation. That doesn't mean it's easy. So I'm not saying it's an easy thing to do, but I think if it's done well, that is a more effective way of approaching it. I will say the team has stolen a little bit of the thunder that are on the next slides, but let's take it as confirmation of what we're all talking about, that we're really all on the same page / slide. So here we go real quickly. You don't have to put a grade on everything students do. Another way of thinking about this, since we're in Alabama and football is king, think of a lot of this as practice. Practice is very important. Your coach is not going to let you not practice, but it's not the practice that your credit or your evaluation comes from. So no one's saying we shouldn't do homework, we shouldn't do activities, we shouldn't do that. We should do them. In fact, one practice that I've seen is some folks will give essentially an acknowledgement that you did it. You might think of it as a completion grade. In my perspective, if you make that worth a small percentage or a small number of points, so it's not going to skew anything, that's an acknowledgement of you're probably not going to learn what you need to learn if you don't practice. But if you're a genius and you already know that, that really, I'll just be honest right now, that really irritated me when there were students that didn't need my help to learn my content area. But I'm not going to hold that against them. But most students did need my help. And it's really a no-brainer. Your grade is suffering, not because I marked you down on things. It's because I don't have evidence of your learning. By the way, that's the same logic that applies to the kid who doesn't put their name on the paper. It's not that I took points off. It's I didn't know who to give that credit to. I have evidence of learning here. Whose evidence is this, right? So I saw that in the chat as well. Totally agree with you there. I can't acknowledge your mastery if I don't know who you is. Grammar was intentional there. Go to the next one. This is more difficult to do in practice. And so if you want to think about this, there are lots of us who can help you think through it. But we've touched on it several times tonight. Hold students accountable without using their grade. And Dr. Shields, you've said this question has come up. Here's the thing. Systems of culture and accountability hold humans accountable, right? So in the classroom, in the school, you can work with your grade level. Let me just give you one example from my own practice. For me, I taught 9th grade as well. Suzanne, I didn't say I didn't like them. I just said I was made to be a middle school person and didn't know it. I loved it, right? But there were two things that I wanted to happen. I wanted kids to be on time to class, and I wanted them to stop using so many bathroom passes. And instead of forcing them or trying to force people bigger than me not to do those things, I created a system that would acknowledge and honor their choice not to do that. And I created a situation where the whole group got rewarded if the whole group did it less. So I leveraged the power of peer pressure to get the whole class to tell everyone, no, you're not using a bathroom pass, or yes, you are coming to class on time, right? So that's the kind of thing where it's not easy, it takes time, but you can hold individuals accountable. And there's not one way. I'm not telling you the way to do it because there isn't a way. What we're saying is now some schools and some districts out there report out on those things separately. So if you say, we're gonna give you a behavior grade, and that behavior is punctuality or collaboration or things like that, that's healthy, right? So I can tell you all about how punctual these students are or how responsible they are. And that's one issue. And my proficiency in science is a completely separate issue. So I can report on both of those. You may have had that. You may have had, when you were a student, an academic grade and a behavioral grade. My perspective is those weren't all bad. Like, there was some real merit in thinking of those separately. I'm talking like it's easy. Once again, it's not easy, but thinking about that. All right, just 2 more on this slide. Try to avoid practices where students get stuck when they get a 0 on 100 points. Specifically, when you give a grade that's worth 100 points and there's a 0 on it. That's because all 4 of the grades in our traditional grading scale have 10 points worth of real estate. And then the F has 59 points of real estate. It's like the king of grades. It has so many points. So if you get a 0, I don't know if anyone has done this math. If you get 1 0, how many 100s do you have to get back up to an average that's a 60? Does anyone know this? Come on, math people, help me out here. Anyone? I think it's 6. Someone check me on that, but it's a whole lot. Now I want to come back to what Sean said a minute ago. What if I don't give a whole bunch of other assignments that are worth 100 points, right? So this gets complicated. So there's a couple of things in here. I'm not saying don't give assignments that are worth 100 points. I'm not saying don't give 0s. I'm saying just be aware that when you have 0s out of 100 and you don't have very many assignments and students don't have any opportunity to make up or retest or whatever it is, be aware that just the pure math of things may get in the way of student learning. Because sometimes we don't mean it that way, but sometimes the things we do rob students of hope. That's not what we were trying to do, but it is the effect it can have on students sometimes. And I'm ashamed to admit, I have done that to students before, and they knew that there was nothing they could do to pass my class. And so why would they do anything for the rest of the grading period, semester, whatever it was? All right. Next thing I recommend is don't do extra credit. As we've mentioned before, extra credit is philosophically, that's saying, I know my learning wasn't what it was supposed to be, but if I slip you a can of vegetables, will you tell everyone that I did better than I did? It's bribery, right? So extra credit is saying things are not what they were. Very kind of a hard thing, but the recommendation is to think about whether redos, and again, not everything you do. This is just about the real, the core standard, or the standards for students, right? The big stuff. Again, a lot to bite off and chew, but just maybe something to put in the back of your brain. And then the last one is, I've talked about things as practice. So again, my suggestion is consider either not grading, or if you grade them, don't give very much weight to things that are practice. So for example, if you let's say that you're using tests and quizzes in your subject area, even if you're on a total points system, make those worth more points and make homework worth not very many points. So that, because just doing your homework is not evidence that you've learned, it's evidence that you practiced. So when you check for learning through a test, through a quiz, through a project, whatever it may be, you want to say, do I have evidence that they've learned? And I don't want the fact that they tried to learn be what I'm reporting out on. Okay, jump in here with me, my friends, and then we have just one more activity before we come to the end of this discussion.
Maxey, I just wanted to add a couple of things. I know Suzanne probably appreciate this. I can remember being even in classes such as Algebra 2 and Pre-Cal, one of the things our teachers always did, we had a fractions test every single grading term in every single class that he ever taught, because not only was it so important, it was something that even if you weren't the most skilled of math students in calculus or pre-cal or whatever, you were still able to demonstrate, some of that real world application of the everyday math you're going to encounter. That was something I remember even from high school, appreciating that at the end of the day, I might not be great at any of the rest of it, but I am going to know that I can do that. And I'm also going to tell my famous story I've told all over the state for all these years. We had a department chair, a international teacher of the decade. Just ask them, they'll tell you, who everybody loved and adored. And one of her grading practices that I found absolutely the most repulsive of all is that she would give 10, she would give 10 points. She would give 10 points for each parent who came to open house. And if one of your parents was a teacher at our school, you didn't get the 10 points. And I've told that story over and over and over. It just, how absolutely ridiculous something like that would be. So not just canned food, Kleenexes, and hand sanitizer, but even the number of people who come, can't believe that someone would even consider something like that being considered a grade. And the message that it sent to the students, of course, was even more impactful.
Yeah, well, one thing, I did some calculations, Dr. Maxey. I think it takes 10 100s to bring that 0 up to an A. I could be wrong, but that is something to really think about. Do you have so many daily grades and you're a I call it a big pot person, and you're throwing everything in and dividing by the total points? Do you have so many daily grades that they overwhelm your summative test and they don't count as much? That's why I think percentages can really be helpful to you. And just anecdotally, I had a system at one of my schools that very similar to what Dr. Maxey was talking about. I did a little homework check thing just to make sure they had practiced, and the maximum they could have added to their final grade was a 5, but the maximum they could have taken away was a 5. So that was minute. If they made 100 on every test, they still have a 95, A+ in my class. But it just helped to encourage the practice, helped those that were maybe on the borderline, but all of those things allow them to be able to do those practice sort of things, but it not make the difference of that 0 that can kill a grade. As you are exactly right, Dr. Maxey, a 0 is a grade killer, even if it's just a 0 out of 10. If you start looking at your total points, those zeros very quickly can take a student. And I have even been in a situation where students knew the content,
Right.
but purposefully did not want to put forth the effort in class, and even went, because it didn't matter on GPA, it was a middle school situation, went to summer school and was able to do it in a week because they knew the content.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
that, I think those kind of things are just all of the, and I'm not being very helpful to my kindergarten friends, but those are just things to think about.
Absolutely. Okay, we are going to give you one more opportunity to have a discussion, and there are just 2 prompts here. Get with your group. I'm going to defer to the team again for how long this is going to be, but name one healthy grading practice that you're going to try or improve. And then I'm guessing this will be the easier question. Name one idea that you need to learn more about before you can tackle. And listen, if your answer is, I need to learn more about all that stuff before I feel like I can tackle it, that's fair, because this is some heavy stuff here. So how long is this breakout going to be, Dr. Shields?
5 minutes. We're good. Does that sound
Okay.
good? Do we need more?
5 minutes sound good to me. All right, we'll see you back here in 5 minutes, everyone.
All right. I'll send a reminder out just to make sure we're good on time in case they need more, but I'm opening the rooms now.
I think we need some more time.
Absolutely.
I agree.
I
We
agree.
really do. We were really getting like
Yeah, our
getting
conversation was getting good. Yeah.
routine.
Put us back in. Put us back in.
I told you, Dr. Maxey, they love these breakouts, and it hurts me
Yeah,
to
we
pull
ended
the
too quick.
breakouts in. Like, it's like, and it is, what time is it in Alabama? It's 8:20. And the fact that y'all are saying, put us back in, that is music to our ears. That says so much about the learners that you guys
It
are.
makes us feel like we're in the classroom, we're learning, we're collaborating with each
Right.
other, just like the kids do.
Right.
That's amazing.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And get to
I mean,
meet more people from different areas, which is really cool.
yes. Yes, we're so glad. Yes, we wish we could give you lots more time.
Okay, I see something in the chat that I want to talk about. So there's a comment here that young elementary can't really grade like this. I would argue that the philosophy of what we're talking about applies at all grade levels. Even if you're doing standards-based reporting, what you're doing is reporting out how the student matched that, right? So again, some of the details that we were warning against, yes, are really not very common at the elementary level. Let me mention a couple of key points here as the answers or the comments keep rolling in. One is that we would be remiss if we did not remind you that you need to be very aware of your district's policies on all things that have to do with instruction. So it's not on our homework list this week, but I'm going to go ahead and say everyone needs to ask about and look for your district's policy on grading. Now, let me tell you, some of you will have no policy at all. Some of you will have a very, very short policy that basically says, we'll give grades. It'll be a little fancier than that. And then some of you will have very detailed policies. So here's also, we want to be clear with you. No one here is advocating that you violate your district's policy. Don't do that. In fact, when I moved to the district where I am now, there were things that were required by policy that I felt weren't best practice. So guess what? I did those things. I followed those policies while I advocated for change. And in some cases, we did change as a district, right? So be sure that you're following your district's policy regarding everything, of course, but in this area, since we're talking about grading this evening.
Dr. Maxey, I'd love to speak just a second to those kindergarten, first, second grade. As a grandmother, I can tell you how much I love working with my grandson and seeing his standard-based grades. It's not just he's made an A in math, but I can see that he is working on, in kindergarten, he was working on recognizing his numbers 11 to 20, but he had mastered knowing his numbers 0 to 10. So it was very much more specific as to what he had mastered and what he was still working toward mastery. So I would say that those grades are much more descriptive, are much more communicative than just saying you have an A in math. And I really appreciated that, and would love to have figured out a way to have done that in my 9th grade geometry class, but I never quite got there. But I wanted to give a shout out to how good, how much that how helpful that was to me, helping him with his math. And also, I think, and it came up in the chats, we do have to think about that communication with parents. And if we're doing what is the grading system? What can they expect? And all of those things, if it's communication to the student, we also are communicating to their families as well.
Beautiful. Okay, let's share your homework and then one more piece, and then I'll turn it back to Dr. Shields. So here is your homework for this evening. Please pick one of the following to pilot this week. So either give your students a rubric before they complete the assignment. That's a thing we alluded to but didn't talk about. If you think about a coach, the Marines, different folks like that, they tell you exactly what they want you to do before you ever try to do it. And then they say, this is how we're going to measure whether or not you did that thing. It's good practice. Show them what you're looking for before you ever ask them to try to do it. That's one option. Second option is grade an assignment and try not counting off for issues that aren't related to the learning target. Just kind of explore that, like what could it look like to hold students accountable for those things without taking points off for them. Or give feedback on learning without recording a grade. And the nature of that feedback is up to you. So we're just encourage you, pick one of these three things. We know that there are some people in here that are just on fire, and you're probably going to do all three things and then do some other stuff. And we want to hear about that too. But we're asking you to look for at least one of these things and give it a try. I want to circle back to a thing I said and Suzanne said. Please don't try to do everything at once. You'll get overwhelmed. So even when you decide, you know what, this is a thing that could really work for me, do one of them and see how it goes and get really good at it. And then add another one and then say, okay, now that's good. You're going to say, man, I really wish I had been doing this years ago. But the other thing is you'll still be at it and you won't be overwhelmed, right? So grow in your practice as you go. All right, bonus learning, not bonus, extended learning here, because remember we said we're not doing extra credit. Dr. Shields made mention of this at the top of the presentation, but wanted to share with you information about the grading conference. So we are coming back for a 6th year of this conference. It's called the Alabama Conference on Grading and Assessment for Learning. It is scheduled for February 9th and 10th. Registration is currently open. It will be in Oxford, and you see the website there. If you have any interest, or if you even want to learn more about it, the website is listed. And I'm going to turn it back to Dr. Shields, who has something exciting to say for, I think, did we say 3 or 4 people?
Oh, that's what I was going to. Yes, ma'am.
I apologize for interrupting, but in the comments, there are a couple of folks that'd like to see the homework slide again, please.
Oh, okay. And we will put that right back up in one GIF. And also, you know me, it's going to be on the prep website in just a shake as well. But yeah, if you want to go ahead and screenshot it, and you can pick one or all. I can't say I'll give you bonus points for all 3, can I, Andrew? That would be bad, wouldn't it?
No bonus points.
No bonus points. But lots of kudos.
It's extra evidence of learning.
There you go. There you go. But yeah, so Andrew, I was going to leave that up to you, but we're going to do a random drawing of those who.
4.
Okay, 4 sounds good. Of those who attended tonight for a free registration comp to attend the conference. I will tell you, it is one, I already told them that on the email, one of my favorite conferences, because it's just what we do every week. It's just lots of teachers coming together to figure out how to be better assessors and graders, and just really fellowshipping around that one ideal of authentic grading. So thank you, Dr. Maxey, for comping these soon to be. We will put this in one of our new tools that we've learned to do a random sampling and send out the winners this evening. Thank you for that. If, by the way, you are not one of those, this is certainly something you could ask your principal to attend as well. It's very highly attended by lots of teachers from around the state. Now, Dr. Maxey, before we shut down and let them ask any questions, I just want everyone to see this curriculum, and I thank Dr. Maxey for referring to so many things we have already done to date, and how all of those things have led up to grading reporting, from the norms and classroom management, talking about creating rubrics. I'm going to keep preaching that. Just if you are not like, I don't ever use a rubric, just Google a rubric. We will send you rubrics, but being able to grade something and give the assignment and the rubric to a student, and then when the student turns in the assignment and you ask the student, well, you know what, you go ahead and score yourself. You go ahead and evaluate yourself, and then I'm going to write what I think on top of what you wrote. It really creates a great conversation of assessment and learning for your students. Next week, we will be, I'll go ahead and go into that. Next week, we'll be moving, which I cannot believe we're looking at November 1. We will be, it's crazy. I can't believe we will be moving into week 9, and we're going to be talking about just finding critical resources. I know one of you in the chat last week said something like, where can I find the stuff? Because we've talked about standards. We've talked about proficiency scales. We've shared a few things like Atlas, and we've looked at some other tools. But next week, Sue Ellen Gilliland, and I don't only have one screen, so maybe you guys can see her, but I can't see anybody right now. And Mr. William Jones, that I know you've met, through these last few weeks, will be leading an awesome discussion on really creating a list of stuff that you can use the next day in whatever field, whatever content, whatever grade you support. It will also be, by request, favorite hat or cap night. So that's going to be fun to think about your favorite caps to wear. I'm going to go ahead and put the attendance. So Dr. Maxey and Ms. Culbreth, what we do every week is we go ahead and let them complete their attendance, which also includes their intersession homework assignment. Of course, we leave the slides. Ms. Washington had brought up a great point that I think you guys brought home in some of those last comments, but Ms. Washington mentioned something about RTI and intervention, and I wanted to make sure we're really clear on that. So Ms. Washington, will you repeat that again so that everybody can hear that? Because we want that messaging understood about giving our students that opportunity for interventions.
Yes, I just wanted to add to the wonderful presentation that we had this evening, just to make certain that we are collecting grades and collecting samples and to ensure that the students that we have within our classrooms, we can show a great sampling of the progress that they are making within the classroom throughout the school year. Many times, because our students are not reaching the greatest potential in class, they are referred to what we call the RTI committee, so that they can take a look and evaluate to see what's needed to provide additional supports to those students. So with that being said, by having that response to instruction group determined that there may need to be some additional grading going on with the students, or a modified way of grading because of what the individual needs are for those students, we want to make sure that you also follow those policies as well around grading and collecting any kind of assignments for the students. That also is relevant for your students with disabilities many times, based upon their individual education program itself. So I just wanted to bring out those 2 points to you as you try to think through the whole grading process within your classroom.
Absolutely. We're going to stay on for a few minutes.